Hey there, thank you so much for joining me again. I am going to be talking today about tips for overcoming this challenge. If you ever experienced this as a Dorico user and composer, where maybe you created a custom playing technique or you changed a font, you updated an expression map, and then you come to a new project down the road, and that information is not there and you have to reset it. And it can be really frustrating. It can be kind of a waste of time and it can be very frustrating. So I want to offer up 5 tips today that have really been working very well for me for some time to help me keep control over what my template does. Okay, so obviously the first step to this is developing your own custom template. So I'm going to show you just quickly how you do that, and I'm going to take myself off the screen. Basically, we just come up here with, if you've got an existing project that has some of the features you like, you just come here to the File menu and Save as Project Template. Then you can choose a category. If you type in something that already exists, for example, like scoring or solo, then these are categories that are available. Let me see if the new hub will open up. Okay, that's not what I wanted. But you're probably familiar with the hub that comes up for Dorico. Let's just say, I'll just load this up so I can be very clear. Okay, here it is. So when you get this sort of startup hub here and you've got different templates, you go to create new and you have different categories here. These are the choose template categories that you would type in that first field. And then these are the ones, if you typed in, for example, this is my main one that I use for almost all my projects. It's under a category called scoring. It's called four-handed sketch. And when I create that project, I get a, let's see what, let's show you what it looks like. So this is what it looks like. It's literally just a four-handed piano sketch. It's got 2 grand staves. But it has a whole lot of other settings built into it as well. Among them, things like playback techniques and fonts that I prefer to see, expression maps, and so on. So let's get into these 5 tips. First tip is save a template. And anytime you work on a project where you made a significant change, what you want to do is resave that template. So delete your music inside the project before saving it as a template. Delete any flows that you don't want. When I do this, I do generally want to have these flows in my setup down here. I'll typically want to have my four-handed sketch, which looks like that, the orchestration, which has all of my instruments loaded into it, and then a motif library, which is really just piano, but tends to be a place where I can store ideas that I want to reuse throughout my project. Then I come up here and I go File, Save as Project Template, and that's my process for saving my initial template. Now there are a number of things that might trip you up. After you've saved your template, there are playing techniques, are probably the most common thing that people make customizations to. So in that case, you come up here to library and playing techniques, something like this. And let's take a playing technique that I've created called playable runs. And I've hit this little star. So this is the second tip, is to make sure that you always click this star next to anything that you want to persist in future projects. That goes for instruments, it goes for fonts, it goes for playing techniques, and a whole variety of things that you might want to preserve. Always hit the star there. Then, when you're done with your project, you remove the music, remove any errant flows, maybe detach these videos, and then go ahead and File, Save as Project Template. Going through that workflow is going to greatly enhance the reliability that the next time you come and create a project, that it's going to do have all those settings in there. Okay. Now another thing that I recommend, a third tip, is always to export your your expression maps. So in expression maps, you want to come here. I've got these expression maps, for example. You want to come here And you want to go ahead down here and you click export. And I export them to a specific place in my computer, but just having them exported means they're backed up because we put so much work into developing them. It's really a terrible shame if you lose track of them or if any of that information isn't preserved for future projects. Okay, so make sure you export and back up your expression maps. It's not really part of the process of making sure that you have the reliable settings in the future. It's just a way of making sure you don't lose them, because you can also come back anytime down here and you can go to import, and then you can find those exports that you had saved previously and make sure they're in your project, because sometimes that's necessary. However, when you save a project template, if whatever expression maps are already in that project will be present the next time you use that project template to start a new project. So that's a real time saver, a big help. Let's see. The next tip that I wanted to offer up is saving and applying custom defaults. So let's say we look at layout options like this. I hit Shift Command L for layout options, and I get these different options. And let's say that I want to set these. I've chosen, for example, this rastral size, or I've changed the way that my staves and systems are displayed, and I want this to be a default. What I'm going to do down here is I'm going to hit Save as Default, and then there's not really a whole lot of indications that it's been saved, but for any project in the future that's not coming from my project template, I can just say Reset to Save Defaults, and whatever I had saved here most recently will be what's brought into my project. Now again, if you're using your project template, you don't have to necessarily go through this process. But when you are starting out with Dorico, or if you're having problems with your settings persisting, make sure you hit that Save as Default, that you're using a project template, and if any display issues come up in your layout options or playback weirdness happens with your playback options, you can always just click that Reset to Save Defaults button in your project and know that that's happened. Unfortunately, this button is a little unpredictable. Well, not unpredictable exactly. It just doesn't get the result that I expected, which was that when you click Save as Default, I would expect that that would then work in all future projects regardless, and that's not what it does. It saves a snapshot of defaults, which either gets stored in your project template, which is another reason why you really want to go down that path, or you can reset to save defaults by clicking this button here, the Reset to Save Defaults button right here. So it's maybe a little less than perfectly intuitive, but it is highly reliable as long as you know how it works, okay? And then the final thing, let's see, we've talked about exporting maps, your reusable template, saving custom defaults, and starring your playbacks. The last thing that I think makes a big difference for reliable and consistent playback and settings from project to project is to use a default playback template. So if we go up here, let me take myself off the screen again. This is the last of 5. And what we do is we go to the main Dorico preferences. And here in Play, at the very top, you see Playback Template, Default Playback Template. Now, mine should be set to Maestro because this is the main one that I use. But it could be one of these if you're using one of the built-in ones. Whatever you're using for your main playback template, and I've discussed playback templates quite often on my channel, so I have lots of videos on how to do that, how playback templates are built, that sort of thing. But if you have any questions on that, please do post in the comments. But setting this default playback, you hit Apply and then Close, and that means that in all future projects, whether you open them from your template or not, it'll go to that playback template to load your instruments. And if you set up your playback template correctly, then a playback template contains endpoints, and each endpoint contains a combination of instruments and expression maps. And so you're gonna get those expression maps just by loading the playback template. So I think if you let's just review these 5 steps. First of all, save a project template and always be revising it and resaving it. Right? That's the quickest way to save your fonts, your expression maps, your playing techniques all in one project, so you know they'll persist from project to project. That's the first step. Second step is export your expression maps to an external file so that you just know they're backed up. Saving and applying those custom defaults where you click in the layout options or playback options or engrave options or whatever window, you hit save as default, and then you reuse the template. But if you're working on an older project, something that may not be running off your most recent template, you can always hit restore from save defaults, and that will load that in. Star all of that little star at the bottom of instruments, custom instruments you make, instrument families, fonts of any kind, playing techniques, playback techniques. Make sure that star is there, and that'll aid you in being sure that they persist from project to project. And the final thing is enabling this default playback template. So I hope that helps everybody develop a more reliable workflow so that they can be sure when they open their project that it's going to have the settings that they need, and they can work from project to project without having sort of, oh, where did my playing technique go? Or why is the font suddenly back to this or that? If you follow these steps, I think you'll see that things become much more reliable, and it's been working really well for me for about a year. And my workflow is I work on a project, and I often, even if I don't really remember if I made any changes, I just resave my project template after any significant project, just in case. And it's generally worked out very, very well for me. So if you have any questions, please post in the comments. Thanks, Rich, for joining me. Let me just read your comment here. Thanks for your question. So this is not pertaining to this issue, but I will definitely answer it because I've been down this road. So the question is, and you can probably see this in a later or watch that'll show the comments. When you use Session Guitarist, which is a Native Instruments plugin or virtual instrument that runs in Contact, do you use Shift-0 to add notes, or do you use regular note input? Generally, when I'm working with that, I'll use regular note input. And then I handle key switches typically in Session Guitarist using MIDI trigger notes. So that's where you have something like this. Let's say, just a very quick demo, let's say that I have something like that, and I go ahead and I select the whole measure, and I go up to MIDI trigger right here, create MIDI trigger region. And I'll type in my key switch, which, let's say our key switch is E1, something like that. What'll happen there is that this E1 will trigger as the key switch, and then, let's say that was either a pattern or choosing, in the case of that particular instrument, choosing the muted or open string kind of plucking. You'll get the desired results. So that's how I put in my key switches for Session Guitarist. I hope that helps. I'm sorry, I think there's been a little bit of lag on my internet today, so the live streams made it through, but I hope nobody's had too much trouble watching it. Thank you so much for supporting my channel. If you're watching this and you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. I really appreciate everyone's support. I will do my best to be back here on Friday. I'm sorry I missed Monday. And then I will be going traveling for a couple of weeks during Christmas and New Year's as well, but I'll be posting some videos regularly during that time. They just won't be live streams. But I will be back live on Friday at noon, and thanks so much everybody for your support, and take care. All right, bye.